may be useful to you. But now I want to talk a little bit about the story of the Kentucky Horse Park. Some of you have been there. Some of you have been there a lot. Some of you haven't been there. And it's been an interesting ride and an interesting examination. The Kentucky Horse Park was opened in 1978, but the idea started in the late 60s and early 70s. And the reason it started was that in Lexington and in central Kentucky, which is thoroughbred country, and it is still today, but it was only thoroughbred country in those days, that the world changed a bit, and that in the 30s and 40s, you could drive on a U.S. highway, this is pre-interstate, and in your Hudson Terrapin or whatever you had, and drive into a famous Kentucky thoroughbred farm, just drive through, pull over into the grass, spread your picnic basket, and in a matter of time, a groom would come out and say, "Would you like to meet Man of War? Would you like to meet Citation?" And out they would come. And you would offer a tip, and it was a gorgeous, beautiful, special day. Well, eventually when the interstate system came, that kind of thing was too much. And it wasn't the same quaint way. And the United States was becoming increasingly litigious. And then there were safety issues, and the stallions, and the world just changed, and the thoroughbred farms locked their gates. Thankfully, there were some visionary people who said, this is wrong for us as a people, it's wrong for our industry, it's wrong for our devotion to the horse, so let's create a people's horse farm, and we'll call it, it's a long story, it's going to be several names, but the Kentucky Horse Park. And it was really to be a tourist attraction where people could see essentially an operating horse farm. Well, the good news about that is it's still that, but it's one component of many components of the park. We've gone from being a tourist attraction, which we are. We do 3 entertainment shows a day of all breeds of horses and costumes and all that. We have the Hall of Champions presentation. We have Kentucky Derby winners and all that. We have horseback riding. We have all the things for tourists. But in addition to that, in the early 80s, it became apparent that with at that point, 1,000 acres, you could probably put on a pretty good horse show. And when you struggle financially, as the park was then, just being a pay your $5 and go to the horse park, the economic engine of horse shows, which you now know about, was a new concept. And here's the idea, again, of momentum. A horse show organizer comes in, and this is something that Craig is clearly something you know about, but it is a phenomenon that built the Kentucky Horse Park. A show organizer comes in, the first one that was jumping on grass. So that organizer says, I will build you a proper jumping ring. And you can have it all year, but it'll help my show and there'll be more interest. I will build you a barn, and you can use it all year, but I need it for our event. And there is example after example after example. So by the mid-1980s and the late 1980s, even the Commonwealth of Kentucky took notice that all of a sudden hotel rooms are being filled, and that there had been private investors in this. And the private investors, not in the sense they owned a share of stock, but they invested because they knew that it was a grand place for their business and for showing horses. And by the way, we'd set up a private foundation by that time. We'd become an independent agency of state government, so we were like a university. We had a board of directors that was appointed by the governor, and it was a horse park, not a state park anymore. And so the Commonwealth all said, we will invest in this, and built some arenas and built some further barns. And what happened was momentum. One thing building upon another. Again, John McDonald's question today. We did it correctly in every move we did. We didn't do it cheaply. We didn't do it with disregard for the safety of horses, which was a great point that was made. Everything with the horse first and the horseman as well. And so that attracted more and more people as we went on. So as we entered the 1990s, we were moving and we had great momentum. One of the other facets of the Kentucky Horse Park that is unusual, but also relevant to what's going to be happening here in Headwaters is as you move forward in the years ahead, is something called the National Horse Center. The idea was let's try to get American horse organizations to come to Kentucky, to come to Lexington, specifically to come to the Kentucky Horse Park. Remembering that as the horse park began, we were thoroughbred racing and thoroughbred breeding, and that's it. But as the 80s and 90s happened, and all of a sudden these other kinds of horses came there was this idea, we've got a lot of upside. And we started with the American Saddlebred Association, and there were one or two others. There was the Egyptian-Arabian group called the Pyramid Society, and pretty soon there's 4 or 5. And they have made their national headquarters essentially in our parking lot and buildings around there. And they're nice buildings, they fit in with the architecture. And we're starting to feel like there's prestige involved in having an address at the Kentucky Horse Park. When I became executive director in 1997, we had 11 groups. When I left yesterday morning, we have 35 national organizations. That for every public employee that works at the Kentucky Horse Park, there are 5 other people that have good jobs in our horse industry that aren't public employees and don't work directly for the horse park. Now, to our governmental leaders and public servants tonight, in the United States, there's always this thing, well, keep government out of anything because they'll screw it up. Well, maybe, or maybe not. But I'll tell you one thing. One of the wisest things the government of Kentucky ever did was fund the Kentucky Horse Park. When you talk about the return on investment of that level, and for every public job there being 5 private sector jobs that are good jobs supporting our state's signature industry. It is an absolute model for success. And if you remember, today there was the word clustering used. I'm not sure that it exactly means this, but I think it does. It means when you do one thing and invite people, more people show up. One of the biggest things in that whole saga of this National Horse Center was the United States Equestrian Federation. It had been on 42nd Street in New York City since it opened in 1917. And I mean literally the same offices. In 1997, they were in the same offices they were in 1917. And so you think this group's a little conservative and a little not ready for change? And we engaged our economic development folks in our state. And here again, this is an important partnership, cooperation, collaboration, that we said, let's make a full court press. Let's do what it takes to get this group to take their blinders off and come to the wild, crazy west hinterlands of Lexington. And it was not easy. And there was a bloody war within the organization. But finally, the deal was simply so good, they couldn't say no. And really, in the fastest the government has ever moved, we broke ground, and in 13 months, we were cutting the ribbon. Now, you have to think about how significant that was for us. Having USEF on our park would be like us building a golf course. All as investors, and then going out and getting the PGA or all the leading golf organizations to move to our parking lot. So you ask yourself, well, what effect does that have on your golf course? Well, you just can't even say. It's everything. And when we did that, and it was in 1999 when we cut the ribbon, that's when the beginning of what eventually became the World Equestrian Games happened. Because national and international visitors were coming there and looking around and saying, oh, okay, this place is real. This is significant. It has real potential. And so then, when we were talking as a staff in the early part of the decade about could we host the World Equestrian Games, it was not something that we had to fly to New York to talk about. We were right there. And our NGV was right there.